My absolute favourite thing about British elections is the way they announce the results.
Jason Barnett, Independent, 27. Daniel George Callaghan, Liberal Democrats, 4,322.
All the candidates gather on stage and someone reads out the vote tallies. And when I say all the candidates, I mean all of them, including the Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak, Conservative Party, 23,059.
Of course, this inevitably leads to joke candidates standing next to high-profile politicians.
Count Binface Party, 308. Sir Archibald Stanton, the official monster raving loony party, 99.
Then, after all the results are announced, the winner gets to give a speech, but all of the official monster raving loonies get to stand behind them while they do it.
The Labour Party has won this general election, and I have called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his victory.
Labour is now back in power. Downing Street is churning out polished videos of Keir Starmer getting down to business. But Labour won with only 33% of the vote, one of their worst results ever. Their policy platform was a small target, and their solutions to many of the UK's biggest issues are unclear.
We're a Change Labour Party, and yesterday we started the work of changing the country.
In the past 4 episodes, we've detailed the chaos, ineptitude and hubris of the Conservative Party during their time in office. They've burned through leaders
to serve the country I love.
They stripped public services. They accidentally brought about Brexit.
We're going to get Brexit done.
And they undermined the public health system, leading to a national emergency. But you might be thinking, if they were so bad, how did they get re-elected 3 times? Why didn't the public elect the Labour Party instead?
We are a government in waiting with a policy programme that enthused and engaged millions of people.
Well, Labour was at war with itself over policy, factions, personalities, Brexit and anti-Semitism.
Please welcome Jeremy Corbyn.
What is the position of Labour?
Are you going to resign, Mr. Corbyn?
Let's wipe that slate clean from today. That is his legacy.
Now, they've promised that they can fix Britain. But have they fixed themselves? I'm Matt Bevan, and from If You're Listening, this is the final episode of Who Broke Britain. Okay, back to the hilarious results announcements, but this one is from 2015.
This has clearly been a very disappointing and difficult night for the Labour Party.
Labour leader Ed Miliband was giving the most humiliating speech of his life, standing in front of a gentleman in an oversized top hat covered in yellow ribbons and streamers, whose name is Nick the Incredible Flying Brick.
Now, I want to say to all the dedicated and decent colleagues who have lost their seats that I'm deeply sorry for what has happened.
In the midst of austerity cuts and promises of Brexit referendums, the party had been expecting a close race, and so had the polls.
Wondering, along with the rest of the country, how months of polls got the real mood of a nation so totally wrong.
Labour had lost, but they'd have another chance in 5 years at the next election.
Britain needs a Labour Party that can rebuild after this defeat. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party.
But who?
There's something very strange going on in British politics.
Out of nowhere, a scruffy socialist with permanently askew glasses threw his hat in the ring.
A North London MP known for his pro-Palestinian, anti-nuclear views and his opposition to the Iraq War.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn was regarded as, and also ran, representing the far left of the party. He wasn't expected to do well, but look at all these people.
Jeremy Corbyn!
But even as he surged ahead in the polls, commentators and Labour moderates said there was no way he would ever become the Prime Minister.
There is absolutely no prospect whatsoever of Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair said Corbyn would be disastrous for the party. Another former Labour Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, said making Corbyn the leader would be a mistake.
We cannot just vote for what you might call on Facebook, what you like as opposed to what you dislike. We have to vote for others. We cannot just vote for what makes us feel good.
I mean, I think people can vote for what makes them feel good. That's pretty much what everyone does always. But Corbyn paid no attention to the people saying that he could never win an election and become the Prime Minister.
Shall we see about that, okay?
There really was no stopping Jeremy Corbyn.
He's backed by devoted fans called the Corbynistas, the true believers who've joined the cult of personality around this career backbencher.
Socialists, angry at how Labor had drifted closer and closer to the centre under Tony Blair and his acolytes, had signed up to the party in droves, hoping to force change. Now, they'd found someone that they were willing to throw their support behind.
Now, this 60-something teetotal vegetarian who writes poetry on the way to work is the next leader of the UK's Labour Party.
Jeremy Corbyn might have been the new leader, but he didn't realise that the party heavyweights weren't predicting that he would never be the Prime Minister. They were promising it.
We cannot go on being Tory light. We've got to be true to ourselves.
They would prefer to not be in power at all if it would stop Jeremy Corbyn moving into 10 Downing Street.
People have had enough of the politics of abuse and the politics of control. This is about the politics of democracy.
So the Labour Party itself pulled out all the stops to reject what it saw as a hostile takeover from the extreme left wing.
I'm very proud to present our manifesto for the many, not the few. Thank you very much.
Using every tool in the box, including accusations of anti-Semitism. What made Jeremy Corbyn such a pariah in the Labour Party? He'd been elected to the UK Parliament in 1983 to the London seat of Islington North.
Is that the jumper that your mum made?
Yes, it is.
She didn't make the shirt as well, I suppose.
No, she didn't make the shirt. That came from the co-op.
One of his closest friends was the socialist firebrand Mayor of Greater London, Ken Livingstone.
Today, for example, he was wearing a mottled green Harris tweed jacket by John Barry, a handcrafted cotton shirt from Hong Kong, a Jose Piscador 100% polyester tie, and trousers which are the bottom half of a suit he bought in a Cheltenham department store some years ago.
Well, I suppose I've always found suits sort of inhibition. I'm much happier just in more casual clothes and without a tie on.
A man who would become Corbyn's vital ally and contribute massively to his downfall.
Red Ken Livingstone, straight from Britain's Labour left, is in town.
Livingstone believed in everything that the Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher didn't.
Massive nationalisation of industry, expanded public spending, nuclear disarmament, the scrapping of the House of Lords, the abolition of the monarchy, and the prohibition of all forms of private health service and education.
He was a favourite target of the British papers.
An incredible smear in one paper that I was importing these pills from San Francisco, which changed the taste of human semen to strawberry flavour.
He says Australia's worst export was Rupert Murdoch because he's had such a big effect on Britain's media.
He was actually a bit of a newspaper man himself. He edited and published his own paper called the Labour Herald. It was pretty much what you would expect from a hard left publication of the 1980s, calling the US president a terrorist, railing against South African apartheid, vaguely violent cartoons about Maggie Thatcher, and criticism of the Israeli government. Now, criticism of Israel from socialists is nothing new. Many socialists would consider themselves anti-Zionists, opposed to the idea of a Jewish state based around Jerusalem. But Livingstone's paper, the Labour Herald, had a fondness for saying that the Israeli government was maybe a little bit like Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime. It called Israeli military operations a blitzkrieg and published a cartoon depicting the Israeli Prime Minister in an SS uniform standing on a pile of dead Arabs. Livingstone also would occasionally extend his criticism to other Jews, calling leaders in the British Jewish community fascists, or saying that a Jewish newspaper reporter looked like a Nazi concentration camp guard. But all this didn't seem to slow Red Ken's career down at all. Livingstone was at the top levels of British politics, either as London Mayor or as a Labour MP for 27 years. And all the way along he was associated with Jeremy Corbyn. They appeared at protests together, at rallies, and on the BBC.
I've got Ken Livingstone and Jeremy Corbyn here with me.
Corbyn shared Ken Livingstone's passion for criticising the Israeli government and his sympathy for militant groups which opposed Israel.
Tomorrow evening it will be my pleasure and my honour to host an event in Parliament where our friends from Hezbollah will be speaking. I'd also invited friends from Hamas to come and speak as well.
And Corbyn shared Ken Livingstone's disdain for Zionist activists, telling one meeting,
they don't want to study history, and secondly, having lived in this country for a very long time, probably all their lives, they don't understand English irony either.
And when Tony Blair won the leadership of the party and pulled it to the centre, Corbyn was pulling back, fighting hardest against Blair's decision to follow George W. Bush into a war in Iraq.
Why are we so signed up to the ultra-right-wing George Bush Project for a New American Century agenda?
But for decades, he and Livingstone were on the fringe of the party. In 2015, Corbyn suddenly became the face of Labour and brought his baggage along with him.
They're fed up with the inequality, the injustice, the unnecessary poverty.
When Corbyn was elected leader, Ken Livingstone was one of his most prominent allies. He was a regular pro-Corbyn commentator in the media.
Jeremy Corbyn is allowing an open debate, and he accepts the fact that people have different views.
And Corbyn appointed him to a Defence Review Committee.
I've been debating military and defence issues for 45 years.
On the morning of the 28th of April 2016, Ken Livingstone was doing one of his regular interviews with BBC Radio London when he said a thing that he likes to say about Hitler and Zionism.
Let's remember, when Hitler won his election in 1932, his policy then was that Jews should be moved to Israel. He was supporting Zionism. His boy went mad and ended up killing 6 million Jews.
As Ken Livingstone went to Westminster to do a TV interview, he was ambushed outside the studios by Labor MP John Mann, a long-time campaigner against anti-Semitism.
Yes, you're a lying racist.
Really? Why don't you go and check
a Nazi
history?
apologist. A Nazi apologist.
Check your history.
A Nazi apologist. You're a disgusting Nazi apologist, Livingstone.
Mann followed him into the building and up the stairs, starting to lose his breath from all the shouting.
You dare say that Hitler supported Zionism? You've lost it, mate. You need help.
Go back and the voice thing.
You need help. You need help. Factually wrong. No, factually wrong. Racist remark.
Livingstone grinned as he said,
"Go and check your history."
So Corbyn suspended him from the party, pending an investigation.
Ken Livingstone was and is a very close friend. How did you feel doing what you've done?
Obviously very sad, but I have a responsibility to lead the party.
Prime Minister David Cameron was quick to pounce on the issue.
They got a problem, it's now totally apparent they got a problem, and they got to deal with it.
But Livingstone was suspended, not expelled. John Mann, the guy calling Livingstone a
Nazi apologist,
was reprimanded by the leadership for making a public spectacle. The thing is, anti-Semitism is like a poo in a swimming pool. If you ask someone how much poo is in their pool, the answer should always be 0. And if it's not 0, then you've got a problem. Poo had been identified in Corbyn's pool, and instead of getting rid of it and dumping in a truckload of chlorine, Corbyn had taken the poo away to be examined and reprimanded the guy who pointed it out. The entire incident left a bad taste in the mouth of the public and in senior party members. Corbyn's opponents ramped up their efforts to take him down. Less than 2 months later, Britain voted to leave the European Union, which we covered in part 2 of this series, and David Cameron sang his little resignation ditty. Party members accused Corbyn of only campaigning half-heartedly for the Remain side and demanded that he resign.
There's already pressure on the Labour leader's job.
He's a good and decent man, but he is not a leader.
Harmful leaks to the media became so common that Corbyn's office began to run mole hunts by sending slightly different but identifiably unique emails to different people so they could find the mole by seeing which one of the emails showed up in the newspapers. In return, party bureaucrats deliberately took longer than necessary to complete tasks, hoping to frustrate the leadership. The relationship between the party headquarters and the leader's office became totally dysfunctional. But the most pervasive problem for Corbyn was the escalating allegations of anti-Semitism.
Labour has been beset by allegations of anti-Semitism for more than 3 years now.
It's anti-Semitism that led 9 of his MPs to quit.
Under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, there's, I think, a
huge problems developed with anti-Semitism, with extremism and intolerance?
I cannot remain in a party that I have today come to the sickening conclusion is institutionally anti-Semitic.
Do you think Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic?
I definitely think that he's done and said things which are anti-Semitic.
By 2019, polling indicated that the public thought up to a third of Labour Party members were anti-Semitic. And while Corbyn did say this,
there is no place whatsoever for anti-Semitism in any shape or form or in any place whatsoever in modern Britain, and under a Labour government it will not be tolerated in any form whatsoever.
He continued to deny that it was a serious issue. But when you've got MPs resigning and the membership concerned about anti-Semitism, you have got a serious problem. The symptoms are very bad, even if the cause is comparatively small. The party was spending more time and resources fighting itself than just doing its job, acting as an effective opposition and trying to win elections. While the Conservative Party was in some ways in the same boat, they managed to put their factional wars aside when it came time to fight the 2019 election campaign.
We will work round the clock to repay your trust.
Labor fought the campaign while in the midst of its own civil war. They lost in a landslide to one of the strangest people in England.
Now, I paint the passengers enjoying themselves.
Okay. The Conservative government was a mess. Johnson resigned in disgrace. His successor, Liz Truss, tried to cut taxes and services at the same time and triggered a mini financial crisis.
This is so awkward.
Her successor, Rishi Sunak, came into the job as a dead man walking. But Labor could do nothing about it. They'd have to wait till 2024 for another chance at taking control. Corbyn resigned as leader. In 2020, an independent report by Britain's Equality and Human Rights Commission was published. It found 2 people inside the Labor Party had been unlawfully harassing people by making anti-Semitic comments. One was a local councillor, the other was Ken Livingstone. The investigation found that Labor's leadership had failed in their zero-tolerance approach. Corbyn was suspended from the party and told not to run again. When he said he would run as an independent, he was expelled by his successor as leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Since then, Starmer has done his best to distance himself from Corbyn at every opportunity, including in this exchange on Sky News.
You asked people to elect Jeremy Corbyn as their Prime Minister. You said, I do think Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister. Jeremy Corbyn, did you mean that?
I was certain that we would lose the 2019 election.
Well, of course. The results from last week's election tell us a lot about the Corbyn era. While Corbyn's successor, Sir Keir Starmer, won the election in a landslide, he did it with fewer votes than either of the elections where Corbyn led the party. This election was less about Starmer's success and more about the total collapse of the Conservative vote. With more support from the party, it's possible that Corbyn could have won. But the Labour Party clearly didn't want him to. Corbyn didn't break Britain. But Britain and the Labour Party itself decided that he wasn't the man to fix it.
We have much more in common than that which divides us.
Labour didn't break Britain either, but they were too busy fighting with themselves to do anything about it.
Drops keep falling on my head.
It was the 14 years of Conservative rule and some of the biggest events that we've known in our lifetime that broke Britain and changed it for good.
You have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters.
Starmer has promised a stable, secure, predictable brand of politics.
My government will fight every day until you believe again. You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change and unite our country.
He's not going to turn Britain upside down. He wants to fix it in small doses, bit by bit. But that might take a while. Oh no, I've got the glue on my hands. Ah!